When successful black entrepreneur Jordan Hall, the proud owner of a restaurant empire, was dragged out of his own upscale bistro by security guards, they had no idea who they had just humiliated. A young waitress captured the moment on her phone, sparking a viral outrage that exposed the deep racial prejudice woven into the fabric of the establishment. But Jordan didn't crumble. Instead, he turned his humiliation into a weapon, launching a battle that shook the city to its core. What happened next will shock even those who've seen it all. But let's start at the beginning. Jordan Hall, a self-made black entrepreneur, pulled into the cobblestone driveway of the upscale bistro he had recently acquired. The late afternoon sun gleamed off the restaurant's pristine glass facade, reflecting a vision of success he had worked tirelessly to achieve. His sleek black sedan was understated yet elegant, much like the man himself. Jordan, in his late 30s, was the embodiment of perseverance, a man who had risen from a humble dishwasher to a celebrated restaurateur with a chain of thriving establishments. Wearing dark jeans paired with a crisp white shirt under a tailored blazer, Jordan looked effortlessly sharp. He wanted his first unannounced visit to this newly purchased bistro to feel informal yet impactful. Today was supposed to be a landmark moment, a chance to meet his staff, share his vision for inclusive excellence, and celebrate the culmination of years of grit and determination. As he stepped into the marble-lined foyer, the familiar hum of clinking glasses and lively chatter welcomed him. But the mood shifted abruptly. Two security guards stationed at the entrance straightened, their eyes narrowing. Rick, a burly man with a ruddy complexion, and Carl, tall and thin, with a perpetually stern expression, had worked at the bistro for years. They were proud gatekeepers of what they saw as a refined space, a position they used to enforce their own skewed sense of propriety. Jordan's confident stride faltered slightly under their scrutiny. Before he could speak, Rick moved into his path, his tone clipped and commanding. "Excuse me," Rick said, eyeing Jordan's outfit as though assessing his right to exist in the space. "The dining area is reserved for guests. Deliveries around the back." Jordan blinked, momentarily thrown. "I'm not here to deliver anything," he began, his voice calm yet firm. "I'm the—" Carl cut him off sharply. "Look, we don't want any trouble. We've had issues with people loitering before. You need to leave." The words hit Jordan like a slap. For a moment, he was 16 again, standing outside a department store, being accused of shoplifting, simply because he was there. His pulse quickened, but he forced himself to stay composed. "I don't think you understand. I'm—" Rick raised a hand, signaling the end of the conversation. "Save it. We don't want any disturbances." Without warning, they each took hold of his arms, their grips firm but not overly rough. Jordan could hardly believe it. They were physically removing him from his own restaurant. His protests went unheard, his identity irrelevant to them. As they marched him out, diners turned to watch, their murmurs adding salt to the wound. Through the glass walls, Jordan caught sight of an elderly couple at a corner table. The woman clutched her pearls, her expression one of dismay. "What's happening to this place?" she whispered to her husband, shaking her head. Outside, the guards released him with an air of finality. "Have a good day," Rick muttered, without a hint of irony, turning back inside. The heavy door closed with a soft thud, leaving Jordan alone on the pavement. He stood there, his heart pounding with a mix of anger and humiliation. For a fleeting second, he considered storming back in, but he knew better. This wasn't just a personal affront. It was emblematic of a deeper issue, one that transcended his own experience. Taking a deep breath, Jordan pulled out his phone and dialed his lawyer. "It's not just about me," he said aloud, more to himself than anyone else. "It's about every black person who's ever been treated like they don't belong." As he sat in his car, watching the bistro's bustling entrance, determination hardened his resolve. Today's triumph had turned into a bitter reminder of the fight he still had to wage. But Jordan Hall wasn't a man to back down. Not now. Not ever. In the bustling kitchen of the bistro, Maya Green, a 21-year-old waitress with a determined spark in her eye, leaned against the stainless steel counter, her phone gripped tightly in her hand. She had just witnessed an unthinkable scene. The security guards forcibly removing a black man from the premises. Maya, who had been serving tables and enduring the bistro's unspoken racial biases for years, felt her heart twist in her chest. She couldn't ignore the undercurrent of injustice she'd always sensed. But this was blatant. She barely knew Jordan, but there was something dignified in his demeanor, something that didn't align with how the guards had treated him. "Did you see that?" Maya whispered, her voice trembling as she turned to Lila, a veteran waitress wiping down the counter. Maya's phone was discreetly recording, capturing the remnants of the event through the kitchen doors. "They just kicked him out. I think he's the new—" Lila's eyes widened, and she quickly pressed a finger to her lips. "Shh," she hissed. "Are you crazy? Don't talk about it. You know how they are. Management will fire you without thinking twice." Maya hesitated, the weight of Lila's warning sinking in. She had already seen it happen to others, staff dismissed over trivialities, especially those who spoke out about unfair treatment. But the memory of Jordan's face, a mix of anger and humiliation, stayed with her. It gnawed at her conscience. "I can't just let this slide," Maya said, her voice firm, despite Lila's disapproving glare. With trembling fingers, she stopped recording and typed a caption. "New owner? Or just another black man treated like he doesn't belong?" Maya hit post. The video, short and shaky, quickly gained traction. By the time she had served her next table, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Notifications poured in as the video was shared, liked, and commented on. The clip spread like wildfire. Some commenters were outraged, condemning the guards and the restaurant's apparent biases. Others, however, defended Rick and Carl, accusing Jordan of not following the rules. The polarizing responses only intensified the conversation. As her shift wore on, Maya's stomach churned with a mixture of fear and determination. She knew she was risking everything by sharing the clip, but staying silent felt like complicity. Meanwhile, across town, Jordan sat in a sleek office, facing his lawyer, Claire Thompson, a sharp and fiercely principled woman who had helped him navigate numerous challenges in his rise to success. "They physically removed you?" Claire asked, her tone icy as she jotted notes. "This isn't just a PR issue, Jordan. It's actionable." Jordan nodded, but his mind wasn't on lawsuits or statements. His phone buzzed incessantly on the table beside him. After the fifth notification, he picked it up, curious. What he saw made his breath catch. A video of himself being escorted out of his own restaurant, the guard's dismissive remarks, and his protests captured in grainy detail. The caption caught his eye first, and then the view count. Tens of thousands and climbing. "What's wrong?" Claire asked, noticing his expression. Jordan handed her the phone. "It's gone public. Someone recorded it." Claire watched the clip in silence, her lips tightening into a thin line. "This changes things. The public's already involved. We need to control the narrative before it spirals." Jordan leaned back, his thoughts racing. The humiliation he'd felt earlier was now magnified, but alongside it was a new feeling: determination. This wasn't just about reclaiming his dignity. It was about addressing the broader issue the video had laid bare. He turned to Claire, his jaw set. Then let's make sure we use this moment for change. If this place doesn't stand for equality, then it stands for nothing. It's time everyone knows who I am and what I'm about to do. The morning sun streamed through the large glass windows of the bistro's private meeting room, where a tense atmosphere hung over the staff assembled around the polished mahogany table. Susan Blake, the restaurant's manager, paced nervously at the head of the room, her tablet filled with an endless stream of notifications from social media and corporate emails. The viral video had reached millions overnight, sparking outrage and polarizing opinions that had left the PR team scrambling. "This is a disaster," Susan said, running a hand through her auburn hair. "The comments are out of control. Investors are demanding answers. And to top it off, customers are canceling reservations." Rick leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed defiantly. "How were we supposed to know who he was?" he snapped. "The guy didn't even introduce himself. What were we supposed to do? Roll out a red carpet?" Carl chimed in, his tone defensive. "We were just following protocol. He didn't look like someone who—" He stopped short, realizing too late what his words implied. Susan's glare could have cut steel. "Do you hear yourselves? This isn't about protocol anymore. This is about optics, perception, and reality. And right now, the world sees us as a racist establishment." Before anyone could respond, the door opened, and Jordan Hall entered. Dressed in a sharp navy suit with a crisp white shirt and a silver tie, he was a commanding presence. The room fell silent, every eye turning toward him. The weight of his authority was palpable as he walked to the head of the table, a thick folder in hand. Without a word, Jordan placed the folder on the table and opened it, revealing the ownership documents for the bistro. He took his time, ensuring every person in the room could see the bold print of his name. "Good morning," he said, his voice calm, yet edged with steel. "I'm Jordan Hall, the new owner of this establishment, and it seems we need to have a serious conversation about operational issues." Rick and Carl exchanged panicked glances, the color draining from their faces. Susan's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water, before she managed to stammer, "Mr. Hall, I had no idea." "Of course you didn't," Jordan interrupted smoothly. His gaze swept across the room, resting briefly on each face, before returning to Susan. "Because people like me don't belong in places like this, right?" The silence was deafening. Even the faint hum of the air conditioning seemed to disappear. Jordan's voice remained even, but each word landed with the weight of decades of systemic injustice and personal struggle. "I built this restaurant with my hard-earned money," he continued, his eyes locking onto Rick and Carl. "Not as a vanity project, but as part of a vision for something better, a space where everyone, regardless of their background, feels valued and respected. But instead, you treated me, the owner, as if I didn't deserve to be here. You didn't just disrespect me. You disrespected the values I want this business to stand for." Susan looked down at her tablet, shame written across her face. Rick opened his mouth to respond, but thought better of it, shrinking slightly under Jordan's piercing gaze. Jordan straightened, his tone firm but controlled. "Here's what's going to happen. Effective immediately, we're restructuring how this business operates. That starts with addressing the biases that allowed this incident to occur." He turned to Susan. "We will implement mandatory diversity and sensitivity training for all staff, and we will create a clear policy that defines the values of this establishment, values that reflect respect and inclusivity." Then, Jordan's attention shifted to Rick and Carl. "As for you two," he said, his voice dropping to a chilling calm, "your actions have jeopardized not only this restaurant's reputation, but also its very purpose. You are both terminated, effective immediately. Rick's face twisted in outrage. Terminated? For what? Doing our job? Your job, Jordan said sharply, was to ensure this restaurant was a welcoming space for everyone. Instead, you let your prejudice guide your actions. That's not a job well done. It's a betrayal of everything this business represents. Carl slumped in his chair, his bravado crumbling. Rick looked as though he wanted to argue, but wisely remained silent. Jordan turned back to Susan. I expect you to ensure that the remaining staff fully understands the direction this restaurant is taking. If anyone has a problem with that, they can join Rick and Carl on their way out. Susan nodded quickly. Understood, Mr. Hall. Jordan closed the folder with a decisive snap and looked around the room one last time. This restaurant is more than just a business to me. It's a platform for change. If you can't get on board with that, you don't belong here. With that, Jordan walked out, leaving the room in stunned silence. The sound of the door clicking shut was the only noise as the weight of his words sank in. Susan exhaled shakily. All right, she said, trying to muster some semblance of authority. Let's get to work. We have a lot to fix. By the end of the week, Rick and Carl were terminated, but Jordan didn't stop there. He initiated mandatory diversity training for the entire staff, partnered with local Black-owned businesses to source ingredients, and created scholarships for underprivileged youth interested in culinary arts. Maya, whose video had ignited the change, was promoted to a management role. She became Jordan's ally in reshaping the restaurant's culture. Months later, the bistro reopened under its new name, Unity Bistro. The story of its transformation became a beacon of hope and accountability, a reminder that change could come, even from the most humiliating of moments. As for Jordan, he stood by the entrance on opening night, greeting customers of every background. The same elderly couple from before walked in, smiling. We're glad to see the change, they said. Jordan smiled back. So am I. Welcome.